Hi everybody, I'm Todd and I hope you're having a great day. Today I'm going to take a look at an affordable channel strip that I've had a lot of requests to review. It's the PreSonus Studio Channel. Now I will tell you that this is not a brand new unit. I was able to borrow it from my local music store, so thanks to Long & McQuaid for that. But it has been checked out and it's in good working condition. Now this is a compact one use, so one height, 19-inch rack unit that gives you a tube preamp as well as a compressor and an EQ section. So a lot in a very compact package. Now it comes in typically below $400 US, so again, a very affordable price point for outboard gear. It's really targeted at home, project studios, content creators, voiceover actors. That's really the type of application for this. So we'll go over the controls, I'll do the setup, I'll also show you the build quality of this, and we'll do some audio tests. Now to take a look at the build quality, I thought we'd start inside. You don't often get to see that. And as you can see, it's a full PCB construction in here. You're not going to expect to have hand wiring in this price point. You have a 12AX7 tube that's part of the preamp stage here. And you'll see, of course, it's mounted on the side here. You got a little PCB coming up from the main circuit board. That's to allow for a 1U chassis, of course. The only thing I'll note is that, you don't want to be pulling on this tube if you're going to change things out, because there is some movement here. I mean, there's going to be with any kind of PCB. You want to hold on to this really carefully while you remove the tube. So just something to be aware of if you're ever going to do a tube swap on this. Otherwise, pretty standard looking construction inside. The controls on the front are all mounted to the circuit board inside, although I will say they feel very solid. Like even the buttons are solid here. So no complaints there at all. Now on the back of the unit, all of the jacks are mounted to the chassis. So that's really great to see. 1/4-inch TRS. Balanced as well as the Balanced XLR. We get our power switch. The power adapter plugs in here, of course, standard barrel size connection. This is mounted to the circuit board. That's not my favorite design. And while this isn't locking, you see they give you a place to loop the cord through, so that'll help make sure it doesn't get pulled out. They show an option here for this digital option card. I've never actually seen one for this unit. There appears to be a pin connector for it here. So I can't really tell you what that's about. I'd assume it's going to be something to do with word clock, SPDIF, maybe optical, but again, I haven't seen one available. And so overall, I mean, for the price point, the construction here looks pretty decent. Now, I went ahead and put the studio channel in a rack here, and I have it connected up to my Orion 32 Plus Gen 3, so I have really absolutely clean, pristine conversion going on here. I've got a Shure SM7B connected up to this preamp, so this is going to tax the preamp and require as much gain as possible from it. And you can see I have it nearly to the top here. If I bring it up all the way to the top, I'm going to get a little more gain, quite a bit of a rapid boost at the end. But as I back it off, it'll drop right out right away. I'll keep talking. You'll see it just completely backed right off here. And it doesn't take much to get to where there's almost nothing. So, there's not a whole lot of adjustment here with an SM7B if you're going to use a microphone like this with this preamp. One of a couple of things, you could use a booster. That'll probably be the best idea with this one. But you could also go ahead and bump up the trim on the output. I have it flat right now, but if I give myself an extra almost 10 dB there, and then I can back off the gain a little bit here. But again, the problem is there's not a whole lot of adjustment on this end, right? I can't back this off too much or everything drops right out. So that's the first thing I've noticed with this studio channel preamp is that the gain is all right at the top. Now we'll go ahead also. There's a tube drive in here, and basically you started at 0% and it goes all the way to 100%, and that's supposed to add some saturation into the sound. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Jump this up one more, and I'll back it off. And then, okay, so up a little bit here. That's probably around 30% or so, just maybe 40%. And you start to get a little bit of the action from the 12A7X tube in there, giving you a little bit of saturation. We'll boost it up a little further, getting to 60 or 70%. Probably wouldn't go this high with a vocal, but I'll take it all the way to the top just so you can hear that. This is really more for instruments and that if you want to add a lot of saturation for effect. But with a vocal, you just can thicken it up a little bit by having that tube saturation turned down a little bit. So I'll turn it down here to just a little bit around 20. We'll keep it there. Now on the preamp section, we have a few other controls. We have a 20 dB pad, and so I'll engage that. And you see right away it drops it down. Back up, so we get 20 dB of attenuation there. There's also an 80 hertz high pass filter here, and I go ahead and kick that in. You'll hear pick up that it takes a little bit of that absolute bottom end, low end out of there. And we have a polarity reverse, so I can switch that over. Again, it's a mono signal here, so you know, we're only running one thing. So, but anyways, that's there, and of course 48 volts phantom power, not needed for the dynamic mic. Now the next section here is compressor, and you see I have both the compressor and the EQ sections bypassed. So I'll go ahead and I'll engage the compressor. And you see we have adjustments here for threshold, release, ratio rather, attack, release, and then makeup gain. And so if we want to get a little bit of compression going, what I'll do is I'll switch the meter over to gain reduction, and now it's going to show us gain reduction. And I'll just turn this till I start to get a little bit of reduction happening. Ratio sitting right around 4:1 right now. Fast attack, slow release, and I do a little bit of makeup gain here just to bring that back in, and that's what we get. Now, if we had a lot more ratio, get a lot more compression going on, I'm going to need to bring more makeup gain into this to bring it back, but that's the kind of sound you're going to get on it here. This one also has an auto feature. I'll engage that, and what happens is this automatically assigns the attack and release. And you can see right away it's brought up the noise floor because I'm getting a whole lot of reduction on here. So you have that as an option. There's also a soft knee, and what that's going to do is alter the characteristics of the tipping point at which the compression engages. So a few things there, kind of some pretty standard controls there. You also have an EQ before comp switch. So normally with this you get the preamp going into the compressor, then going into the EQ. But if you want the EQ before the compressor, you can go ahead and do that. Now I'll go ahead and I'll switch over to the EQ. I'll turn that on, but I'll also back off on the compression. We'll go back to around 4:1. And we'll just turn the makeup gain down a little bit. Don't need quite that much. There we go. And now we'll engage the EQ. Now the EQ is kind of interesting on this unit. We have 3 bands. We have a low, mid, and a high band. And the low and the high band are a shelving EQ unless you push the peak button. That switches it to a bell EQ with a curve of 0.7. So kind of an interesting thing. So right now, you know, if I start adding gain here into the low shelf, you'll see it starts really adding a lot of bass to my voice and that. And here the frequency control does nothing because again it's a shelving EQ. Now if I go ahead and click the peak on, what it's going to do is it's going to give me different frequencies here with again a Q of 0.7. So that's going to change the effect, gives us a little bit of adjustment on it. So a little different than just having a shelf alone. Then in terms of the midsection, here we have parametric. So we have the gain, we also have the frequency, and we have the Q. So again, if we want to add a little bit into the middle here, see what frequencies are going to sound good or not so good, you'll hear them. A lot of times too, you find a frequency that's not so great, and you take a little bit of that out. That's another way of dealing with it here. And of course, you can adjust the width of the Q depending on the effect you want to get. Then we can go into the high filter. Just back that down a little bit so it's not so much. Okay, and now here in the high, same thing. It's going to be a shelf right now, so it's going to just boost a lot of those really top frequencies up. No effect from the frequency control. When I go to a peak, now I have the adjustment, and I'll crank it right up. And now you're going to hear the difference as we go through the frequencies. Sweepable. Quite a range here that we can adjust. And so if I was going to dial this in, I'd probably leave this on a shelf so I don't have too much coming in on that section here. Again, I'm going to find a frequency I really don't like here on the mid band, and I'll just go through again and see where I'm getting a frequency that's not really pleasant to listen to. Going through here again, maybe in there, this sort of range, and then I'll back that off a little bit in here. And of course, we don't want too much on the low end coming through, but that'll give you an idea of the EQ section. Again, we can put it before the comp. All that's going to do is, if we especially have low frequencies, it'll make the compressor react a little bit earlier. So that's the controls on this. We got a fair amount of adjustment for a fairly basic unit like this. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw this in a mix application so we can use the onboard effects. Now I've inserted the studio channel here. I put it on a bus that have drums, bass, acoustic guitars, and vocals, so we can do each one. We'll go through the controls. We'll see the effect that we get. And as you see, the control is still active here, so we're not bypassing the preamp section. This is the line input, of course. I'll dial up some saturation with the tube.
Right now it's all falling apart. Right now you don't know where to start. Right now the walls are caving in. Right now you don't know where to begin. Right now you're searching high and low. And right now you don't know where to go. Right now you hear the thunder roar. Right now it feels like you lost the war. Right now it's all falling apart. Right now you don't know where to start. Right now the walls are caving in. Right now you don't know where to begin. Right now you're searching high and low. And right now you don't know where to go. Right now you hear the thunder roar. Right now it feels like you lost the war. Right now it's all falling apart. Right now you don't know where to start.
Okay, and while this is mono, it'd be nice to have 2 studio channels to try this in stereo in the mix. I'll let you hear it in mono anyways. While I have the studio channel connected up to my Orion 32 Plus Gen 3, we'll check the self noise. And so this is with the gain all the way at the bottom. Now without the studio channel, this is dead quiet. The converters are silent, but with the studio channel, we're getting a little bit of noise here, but I mean, this is very respectable. But let's see what happens when I turn the gain up. So now I'm increasing the gain. Got the gain to about halfway here, but as we know from the test earlier, this really isn't half of the gain. We can see we're starting to get a little bit of electrical noise coming in. Still really low here. This is sitting, around minus 114 in that one spike. Same thing up the top here, so not bad. I'm going to turn it all the way up to the top. And so maximum gain here, starting to get a little bit more, but overall not bad here. Still sitting, well below minus 100. And I'll also, we've got the output gain here cranked all the way to the top. I'll go ahead and I'll add the compressor circuit in. So now we have the compressor circuit, and we're getting a little bit more noise coming in here, but again, still relatively low. I'll add the EQ circuit, and I have the EQ set as flat as I possibly can based on the dials. And again, the noise floor here is relatively low. So like for a unit in this price range, I'm going to say the noise floor is very acceptable. There's plenty of room between this and a recording level to get good recordings. Now, I won't spend a lot of time on features and specifications. There will be links below. But a few things to know here is this unit gives us a total of 64 dB of gain, 54 dB from the preamp side, plus another 10 on the output trim. But as we saw with the SM7B, there's a drastic jump in that gain right at the top. So I'm going to say if you need a gain-hungry source like that, you probably want to use a mic booster with this and try and get a little more usable range. So that's a concern. Although I will say that the noise floor wasn't actually too bad, even at the highest level of gain. So good on them there. That's what they're trying to do here. Other things to note with this here, very basic I/O, XLR and TRS balance jacks on the back. No insert points, nothing else here. So pretty straightforward. Otherwise, external power brick, 16 volts AC power here. You want to use theirs. And the specs are actually pretty decent overall for this price range. Now that we've looked at the build quality and done a few audio tests, I'll give you my final thoughts. First of all, for the price point, you get a lot with this unit. I mean, you get that tube preamp section. You can adjust the amount of saturation by driving the tube harder. Great to see. High pass filter, polarity switch, all good. Compression has a lot of adjustments on there, plus the auto feature and soft knee. EQ, again, a limited EQ, but it's nice to have the ability to switch between a shelf and a bell for the low and high filter. It gives you a little more flexibility there. Only the mid-band is really parametric, if you will, here. So overall, that's okay. The one fatal flaw for me with this unit overall is simply the way the behavior of the jacks works for input on the back of the unit. As soon as you plug in a 1/4-inch TRS jack, it disables the XLR. So as soon as you plug into that, it doesn't matter if the cable is open on the other end, it's plugged into a patch bay or a source. As soon as that's plugged in, XLR goes away, and there's no switch for XLR or line inputs. So I can't switch between microphone and line input on the front of the unit, and if I want to have both connected, it's only going to give me line. So I have to get to the back of this unit all the time if I want to use it for tracking as well as a mixing application insert. So that to me is a huge issue and a big oversight on this. Otherwise, I mean, the controls felt pretty solid, I have to say, and this isn't a brand new unit, so that's probably a better test than anything else. VU meter seemed to behave fairly well as also. So, I mean, it's not a bad unit for the price. I would say, you're going to get a lot out of it if you're starting out, if it's for a project studio, hit a lot in one US space. But again, the way the connections work on the back for me was a huge miss by PreSonus. I'm not sure why they did that. And so would I recommend this unit? Well, it depends. You want to use it for one application, so it's tracking. You want to use it for voiceover, content creation, podcasting, vocals, an instrument, and that's all you're doing with it. The compressor and EQ sections work fairly well on this, and you're going to get a nice range of tone. If, on the other hand, you want to switch back and forth between mixing applications as an insert as well as for tracking, the way the connectivity on the back works is a deal breaker for me. All they had to do is add a switch on the front for line level and mic preamp, and you'd be good to go. But just plugging into both jacks does not work here. You have to have access to the back of the rack. So for me, that's really a deal breaker. But otherwise, like I say, if it's kind of a one or the other, it's going to do the job for you. In this price range, surprisingly clean and quiet. Now, if you're looking for other ideas on how to level up your home studio, check out one of the videos on the screen. I appreciate you joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.